No, I can.
Okay. Well, we are live. My name is Marsha Ellison. I'm president of the NAACP Fort Lauderdale Broward branch. I'm also the civic engagement chair for the NAACP Florida State Conference. And I wanted to certainly thank everyone for agreeing to participate and those that are on, because we have, there's nothing more important than taking care of our children and saving our children, certainly saving them from the juvenile justice system. And that's quite frankly, not really what we're doing here in Broward County, but I know that we want to. I also chair, and most of the people on here now are on our Circuit 17 Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. We have watched the numbers over the years. We have looked at every entry point that juveniles face as they enter into our system. We have worked with all of the stakeholders. We've worked with any law enforcement agency that would work with us. And quite frankly, we were doing well, but we're not doing well anymore. And so we want to make sure that we get back on track. What we wanted to do is talk about starting with juvenile civil citation. I know there is an adult civil citation, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We are talking about juvenile civil citation. We want to make sure that what is being discussed is real. We want to not speak in generalities. We want to be fact-driven, and we want to affect change that's going to save our children. And we do that by illuminating the issue, bring attention to the issue, and let's figure out, starting with civil citation, why is it not being utilized properly in Broward County? I received the report. I got it actually from Attorney Gordon Weeks, our public defender, on February 8th. And what it says in this report, it says that Broward County is the third worst in when it comes to missed opportunities. A missed opportunity is there were children who could qualified, could have been given an opportunity to participate in civil citation, which is a pre-arrest program, but were denied that opportunity. And so for 1920, the year 1920, the very worst in Florida was Hillsborough County. There were 397 children denied an opportunity to participate in civil citation. Orange County, number 2, 376 children denied opportunity to participate, followed by Broward, the third worst in the state of Florida, 276 children. And then I look way at the bottom, there is Miami-Dade with only 27. And so obviously we're concerned something is wrong. The NAACP piloted a program for civil citation some years ago in conjunction with the city of Fort Lauderdale, long before the county was involved. And when I wanted to find out the proper way to do it and how Miami-Dade was so successful, or who was so successful, I went to Miami-Dade to look at their operation and to understand their rules, and we modeled our program after Miami-Dade then. And so we have continued. However, we have stopped in being a leader, and now we are the third from the worst. Is very embarrassing, but more importantly, it is preventing children opportunities. We just can't continue in this vein. So I wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity to find out directly from Miami-Dade State Attorney, who the judge is going to introduce very shortly, on how they are so successful and some best practices and anything that she can share with us so that we can no longer be in the top 3 of the worst offenders of denying children an opportunity to have a second chance. Because I know we believe in second chances for children in Broward County. And so with that, Judge, if you will introduce State Attorney Kathy Fernandez. Randle, please, ma'am. You are muted, Judge.
Thank you so much, Madam President. It's an honor to be here, and it's also double honor to have been asked to introduce the State Attorney for the 11th Judicial Circuit, and that would be Kathy Fernandez Randle. Ms. Randle has been the State Attorney in Miami-Dade County since 1993. Prior to that, she was an Assistant State Attorney under Janet Reno. And so that's how I got to meet her. She has always been at the cutting edge of things, even when she worked with the grand jury as an assistant. But as state attorney, she has been recognized for new and novel approaches to criminal justice reform. Some of the reforms that she is noted for are the civil citation program for the juveniles, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But she also has promulgated a program for adults in the civil citation program. She has developed the only prosecutor-led child support program in the state of Florida. She is the first woman of Cuban descent to hold that position throughout the state. And Ms. Randle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're one of 3 female state attorneys in this state. I did some research. There's one in the 20th, that would be Ms. Fox, one in the 9th, Ms. Worrell, and we have you in the 11th. So tonight we are just eagerly awaiting to hear how you only missed 27 children to go through the citation program, but Broward has missed over 200 children. So without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the person that I consider a good friend of mine, Kathy Fernandez Randle. Ms. Randle. I think you have to.
Okay, you have to unmute me.
Okay.
Okay. So I wanted to say thank you. I'm going to say thank you first to Judge Holmes, because I just adore her and she knows that. And she was our keynote speaker during Black History Month, I think this past January, right? And she just was a fireball when I knew her, and she still is, and she's still involved. She's one of my heroes for sure. And to see you this evening, it's just such a touching privilege. And you know that comes from my heart. And to President Ellison, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think I work very closely with the NAACP down here in Miami-Dade, and it's just wonderful to know the hard work that you guys do, and the missions that you fight, and the advocacy that you provide to communities all throughout really Florida, especially in South Florida. And I want to give a real shout out to State Attorney Harold Pryor. I have to tell you, he's going to set your place on fire. He is just all about innovation and creative, this and that. And there's no doubt in my mind that if everybody helps him, he will create an even better civil citation program, not just for juveniles, but for adults. He has been really a good advocate. He's looking for changes. He's called me a number of times, and I'm just really looking forward to working with you, Harold, on a number of different things. You're going to take everything even further and better. And may I just give a quick congratulations to Gordon Weeks. I've already congratulated Harold a number of times, so excuse me, I don't know that we've met, but congratulations. That's quite a victory that you had. And to everyone else that's out there, thank you so much for this opportunity. Real quick before I jump in, Madam President, I would like to have a point of personal privilege to introduce a couple of folks on my team, because they're the ones that really make things happen, right? So I'm going to start with Scott Dunn. He's here. He is my deputy chief, and Juvenile is one of, there he is. Hi, Scott. Scott Dunn does a magnificent job. He's got a lot of stuff under his wings: human trafficking, civil citation, juvenile, felony divisions, gun violence initiative, a lot of things that we've created. I'm really entrusted in him. So thank you, Scott. And then we have Todd Bass. Todd, there he goes. Todd is the head of our juvenile division. And he's the one that really tracks all these things. And he makes all the staffing decisions on which cases stay in juvenile, which cases go somewhere else. That's a whole nother topic about direct file and not direct file. We have very strong feelings about that. And I have not always been agreed with by some of my colleagues in Florida, but that's okay. We do what we feel is right. So that's Todd. Thank you very much. So, Madam President, I thought this was about all civil citations, but it's okay. Let me focus on juveniles to start with, okay?
Yes.
So the way that first of all, and I don't quite know what the structure is in Broward County. Every community is different, and there's nothing that's a cookie cutter for everybody, right? And I'm certainly the last one to say that anything that I'm going to suggest is something that should be done in somebody else's community. This is just an opportunity to share some ideas, some mechanisms, some strategies that worked for us in case you want to, steal some of those ideas and learn from our mistakes. So let me start by saying in Dade County, we have about 34, 35 police departments.
Ask them what you share.
Oh, can we share, please? Madam President, do you have someone that's your I have a PowerPoint for all of you, so you don't have to keep looking and listening to me at the same time.
Okay.
Let's see. Connecting, is it Martha Taylor? Did you speak to somebody in advance? Okay.
No.
Sorry, everybody.
Okay.
Hang on one second. I think we're trying to find, do you have someone that's running your technology, maybe? We have a PowerPoint to share.
Yeah, we're looking now.
Yeah, they haven't given us the ability to.
Can you give us the ability to share, please? Do you
Yeah,
have-
I'm looking now to.
Okay, that would be great.
Somebody will make us a co-host.
You know what you could do, Madam President? You want to make us a co-host?
Yes.
And then if you'll share, you give up a little of that
Which
power.
one is you? You're on here like 85 times.
Okay. Oh, I am? Where
Okay.
would you find me? Let's see.
All right. One of you is on there that can share.
Okay, let's see. Do we get a share? Okay.
You're a
Co-host.
co-host.
Here we go.
Not really,
Mhm.
not really not sure.
No, it didn't come through, Madam President. Can you try another one? She can't, she says I'm on there a couple of times, so she's having a hard time figuring out which one.
This is the correct one because she expanded our ability.
You expanded our abilities. Would it be under, no, breakout room? Well, we're not finding it. Well, while I'm sitting here with Zach, you keep trying, Zach.
Mhm.
And maybe, Madam President, you'll have your folks keep trying and I'll keep moving so you don't all just
Okay,
waste your very valuable time. Is that all right?
that's fine.
So, as I was saying, so we have 34 police departments in each community. And I mention this because I suspect you have a similar infrastructure. Every community asks their police to do something different. It depends on what their particular needs are. And I'll give you one quick example. Miami Beach, it really wants marijuana prosecuted. They want to continue to make arrests and prosecute them. I have said that that should be a civil citation. So, I can get all the municipalities to work with me on that, but you're always going to run into a little bit of that. So a lot of it is working with your municipalities and their police chiefs. So what we did was, overall, we look at, as people are getting arrested or coming into the system, what we want to do is try to treat them as individuals, right? and not just as offenders. And that's our underlying philosophy about looking at the conduct or misconduct and looking at what criminogenic needs can we address. In other words, is it substance abuse? Is there something else that we can work on other than just sending them through the system? So what happened here was many years ago when juvenile crime was really at an all-time high, our Dade County public school systems, which is one of the largest in the country, as is my office, they instituted what they call a zero tolerance policy. And that led to all these mandatory arrests of juveniles. And I started to look for some alternative to all these arrests, because a lot of it I thought, in my humble opinion, was junk. It was just junk stuff. It was a kid that did spitballs in the classroom. It was the kid that, went like slapped away his teacher's hand, or, was being bullied and pushed somebody. And it was that kind of stuff that was coming into the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system. And it was really not a place. It was inappropriate. So I then went to the head of the police department at the school. All of our schools have its own police department. Our school system does. And I went to the police chief and I said, we got to look at these. So long story short, I did an analysis. I was able to convince him that there's got to be an alternative to arresting. And at that time, I was looking for a pre-arrest, some kind of pre-arrest mechanism. And what I discovered was that what they really wanted, they were okay with pre-arrest, but they needed something substantial. Like, I need to tell the principal that I did something with him. I need to tell the other parent whose child was fill in the blank, right? Pushed, got the spitball, that we did something. And that was where the civil citation concept came up from. And so the first thing we did was we went to the clerk of court. Again, I'm not sure how your structure is, but what we knew is if any of those arrest records, that A form, as we call them, ever gets into the clerk's office, into the system, it's really difficult to ever roll that back. And so all the collateral consequences that we were trying to avoid, the key was not to get that into the system. So the first thing I did was went to my clerk of court and I asked him, can you just take these A forms that you're getting from the police and hold them? And let us do an assessment and see if there's some alternative pathway, alternative result that we can do for this child, right? And that's how we came up with, okay, no, and then we had to convince the police, well, don't use A forms, don't make an arrest, use the civil citation. So I don't want to give you the impression that this was an overnight. This was a gradual learning process where we were able to work together and convince each other that it was okay, that it was safe, and this was a good alternative. And so that's, we really did start there, and we've continued in that way for years. And just to also let you know that since all of our police departments, just on juveniles alone, since then, 21,500 juveniles have been cited instead of being arrested. And you know what? There were no terrible, the earth didn't fall apart. It did not increase crime. We found that, oh, it looks like you all found my PowerPoint. All right, there we go. Good job, Madam President. So what I was telling you was that it was actually very successful, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. But you'll see, and I guess this is part of the article, Madam President, you were talking about that the Miami leads in keeping kids out of jail, because of course, another part of the argument is whenever you make an arrest, that goes to our local jail. Our local jail has a cost attended to it. And the police are out of service. They're not on the street responding, right? They're over at the jail booking somebody, or at the detention center for juveniles booking somebody. So if you can also appeal to them on a fiscal cost efficiency level, that helps a great deal. Let me also say that I think, Madam President, when you were referring to I don't know if you can see the PowerPoint. Where are we on the? It's not on. Okay, never mind. The Carruthers Institute talked about how Florida's pre-arrest diversion efforts, and they reported this in 2019, they concluded that statewide, 25% of the juveniles that might otherwise be eligible for civil citation were not receiving them. And I think that's kind of sad. And I know it sounds like we're bragging about ours, and I really don't mean it that way. I say that because, you know, we're upwards of 95%. We always range between 90 to 95% of our eligible juveniles get cited. And I'm going to show you that it reduces crime. Their success rate is huge. So it is a very positive, healthy alternative to making arrests. And I'm not going to talk about Broward because you're my buddies, you're my neighbors north, and we got to give Harold a chance, right? I want to just continue talking about the juveniles for a minute. Did I tell you that one of the things that led to the civil citation also was in 1994, it was the year I was elected. It was shocking. Remember I told you that juvenile crime was at an all-time high? It was just under 22,000. Ilona, I don't know if you remember that. 22,000 cases. There were arrested, juveniles were arrested, and cases were filed in just Dade County. That's not a statewide number. And then if you want to compare that to where we are today, and Citations has a piece of this, but listen to just the general arrest. That's kind of that was another reason for civil citations. We were so overloaded. In addition to a zero tolerance, right? In the schools, we were overloaded with the arrests. And let me just share with you today, for Dade County in 2019, right? So I gave you 1994, just under 22,000. And in 2019, we were just under 3,000. 3,000. That's wonderful news. And then last year, of course, we got to be careful. By the way, that's an 87% decrease in juvenile arrests and juvenile crime. I'll give you last year's, but I always think we need to be careful about relying too much on 2020 because of COVID. But it was a 92% decrease, and it was under 2,000 arrests. But arrests are generally down in the community. Here's the good news, and here's what I want to share. The success of our juveniles going through the civil citation program, it was complete. Again, it was the Carruthers Institute, and I can send you the site. It's on my PowerPoint that I'll give to you, Madam President, and you can share with your members later. Sure. If any of this is of interest to you. But 83% of the juveniles who went into the civil citation program successfully completed it, right? That's great. 83% successfully completed it. And does anybody want to take just a guess at what the rearrest rate was? Ilona, come on, you did this for years. What was the rearrest rate? 3%. Did you say 3 to 4%? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I said 2 to 3%.
Well, okay. Yeah. The rearrest rate was 3 to 4%. Thanks a lot, Ilona. Whose side are you on anyway? But I mean, I just think that's so significant because we can continue to use that kind of data when we go to the municipalities, when we go to our local police chiefs. I know you have a sheriff there as well, but this is the kind of data that you can say to communities, don't worry, we can do this alternative and it's going to be okay, because the success rate, the rearrest rate, which is really what we want, right? We want to reduce the rearrest. We don't want them to have to go into a criminal justice system that it's so hard to shake that for years to come for junkie cases. I'm not talking about gun violence cases. We're talking about, really minor violations here. There's also the fiscal piece. We could, I guess the smart justice folks say that it saves about $5,000 a year. That's probably just in the jail and response team. Is that your wonderful Colonel Holmes there would probably relate to what those costs would be. And so if I could, I'd like to morph a little bit into adult citations. Okay, it'll be short, won't be as much on, I focused on children for you because I noticed the change in, the new title was about children. But the adult population is very important too, because that's defined by 18 and up, right?
Mhm.
So let me just say that what I did was I took the experience that we had with the juvenile citation. There he is. Hi, Sheriff. Did you hear me talking about you? Is that why you jumped on? Well, it's all good things, I promise you. But what I did, Madam President and board members and others, elected officials, I took that experience and just moved it over for the adult citation program. So we began sort of keeping count of that in like 2011. And I can tell you that since that time, since we started counting, which I don't know that really it coincides with when it started, but that's the data that we have, right? So we're going to live with that. We have cited, instead of arrested, over 41,000 individuals. That does not include the juveniles. If you add the juveniles, you're talking about over 61, almost 62,000. So that's a significant number of people that we were able to keep out of the criminal justice system. And so just let me tell you, again, so give you some numbers. Like for instance, in 2017, we had just under 9,000. These are adult citations. We keep them separate. We keep the databases separate. 2018, we had just under 6,500. I don't know what happened in 2018. It was very low. 2019, it even went lower. I think that's because it's all gone down. So, your civil citations are going to follow your downward arrest.
Mhm.
For those of you that understand that. But so we had 2019, 4,400. And then this is interesting. I would have shared this with you and I will anyway, but looking at the civil citations for adults, this is from January through December of 2020. And remember, COVID really started right there, like in March, right? So this is pre-COVID numbers. We had 9,550 adults that were cited instead of arrested. And we expect, and I'll tell you why I think that is. I think that had a lot to do with my declination of prosecuting possession of marijuana cases and simple possession of marijuana cases. And I say that because as I look at this chart, and I'm so sorry that we weren't able to share that with you, we have 1,800 possession of cannabis cases that we weren't prosecuting. And by the way, my police chiefs and I talked about it at length. They understood my position. They were very respectful. I told you it wasn't easy for some of the communities that our police chiefs represent. So we did it in a graduated way. If you're interested, I'm happy to answer those questions later. For those areas, I gave you the example of Miami Beach, where they wanted to go ahead because by state law, it still is a crime. But I chose to make it consistent within the criminal justice system as a minister of justice, that if I have 10, 15 other jurisdictions issuing civil citations and not making arrests, that the appropriate thing for me to do in the administration of justice is to treat them the same when they come to me. And so gradually, it's just sort of, they understood my position, and I told them I'm not going to prosecute you. So anyway, The other one that goes with marijuana is possession of drug paraphernalia. So if you look at just those two, that's just under 2,500. And then all the others, we had a lot of, doing business without a license, illegal parks violation, possession of alcohol is always another big one, swimming, fishing, theft is another one. So I'm going to close with this, by the way. We are in the process of considering expanding even further particularly our civil citation for adults. And it would apply to juveniles in terms of things like petty theft, which we pretty much do now anyway for juveniles. But that's really where we're going to be going in the future. One last thing is I'm going to be exploring citations for driving while your license is suspended. I don't know how you all feel about that, but I just look at we have criminalized so much with suspending people's licenses. And they get into this hole where they can't pay the fees. Maybe it was tolls. There's a whole bunch of different reasons, right, that licenses get suspended. We're asking them to make these choices. When they can't do X and they end up in this system, they expect the criminal justice system to somehow remedy that. And I'm not quite there yet. I don't know what that looks like. I'm very happy to come back to you, Madam President, if you would want me to, and see how we progress. I forget the number, but we have something like, I don't know, 700,000 unlicensed drivers in Miami-Dade County. That's crazy. I mean, think about that number. We're almost 3 million people. Is 700,000 unlicensed drivers? What's the point of that? So I'm not sure what the answer is, and I'm not pretending to know the answer, but I'm certainly going to be exploring other options to what's happening now. So with that, thank you so much. Sorry the PowerPoint didn't work, but Madam President, I leave it up to you to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to start. I have two questions. The last I checked, Miami-Dade has more law enforcement agencies than Broward, but yet you were able to get them on board for juvenile civil citation.
Yes.
Number one, how were you able to do that? Because we've been at Mr. Pryor is new, but we're not new to this whole piece, so we haven't been able to get a lot of the agencies to come aboard to fully participate. I mean, we might see a report from the county who runs our program, and it might say one from, say, Hollywood Police, but they'll have plenty more missed opportunities. And number two, there is a hang up, and I'm not sure how it works now, maybe your staff will know. The rule years ago when I visited the facility there, it said the rule was I think there were 3 issues, 3 crimes or misdemeanors that it wasn't an absolute no on, but it was a let's pause and we'll meet. Your office met with a public defender and some other agency, maybe DJJ, to discuss it. I know one of them, if I recall, was domestic violence. One of them was cruelty to animals. So, and you were taking the cases individually to really understand the situation before it was determined that the child would be arrested. So if you could answer those 2 questions, that would be extremely helpful.
Well, I can tell you generally, I'm going to ask Todd to step in just a second, but I will tell you, Madam President, generally, when it comes to anything that's violent or has a tendency of violence, domestic violence, I've always taken very seriously, and I want to make sure that we have meaningful interventions there, whatever gets us to that, okay? And did you say cruelty to animals?
I think that was one of them. I remember there were 3, and I believe
Okay.
cruelty to animals, where it would be an evaluation. They may not have gotten civil citation, but your officers would take a pause, meet, and discuss each case individually before making the final decision of where it would be diversion or civil citation.
Okay, well, I appreciate that because I didn't even get into post-arrest diversion, right?
Right.
We have layers and layers of diversion for all kinds of things. So Todd, you're there. Todd, would you make sure that we answer this accurately, please?
Absolutely. Okay, so I will tell you that almost every misdemeanor that we have is eligible for civil citation. Now, with the exception of possession of a firearm by a minor, that is a misdemeanor. We do not put that in, obviously, because it's so dangerous. You know, and gun violence, we've really taken really just a hard look at, just because there's so many kids that are killing each other with guns. It's just so tragic. Now, the cases that would not be eligible, typically if a victim indicates that they are not going to approve of civil citation, then they generally will not go in. So that's why we're not at 100%, because there are cases where victims are not okay. Now, sometimes victims are not okay from the beginning, and then later on they're okay with other diversion. But again, once you file that A form, the arrest form with the clerk's office, you can't go backwards. You're in the system and you are not eligible for civil citation. The only other case that comes to mind, if it's some sort of sexual relation or some sort of sexual cases like indecent exposure where there's something more going on, we'll take a closer look at that. Cruelty to animals, we would take a closer look at that. But generally, almost every other misdemeanor would be eligible for civil citation, and my staff, and also, and this is what I was answering in the chat while the state attorney was talking, that we want every juvenile who is eligible for civil citation to go into civil citation. We work on that. We work on the police officers. That's what I was saying. If a police officer arrests a child for a misdemeanor, they take him to the JAC, and we go, wait a moment. We have staff. We have paralegals at the JAC. The JAC staff will say, excuse me, police officer, here's a letter. We have letters from every single police chief that advocates the civil citation program and tells their officers that if a child is eligible, they should go into civil. They're shown that letter, and then what was an arrest turns out to be, okay, it's a civil. Because they know that, you know, and we had one particular police agency that just had a very low percentage of putting kids into civil. We worked on that agency, and now they're in complete compliance. So exactly what the state attorney was saying, it doesn't happen overnight. You work on the areas that you have to work at, but our goal is to get to 100% if possible. That's what we want to do.
Thank you, Todd. And Madam President, you know, he mentioned two things that I think is worthy of underscoring. And that is, one, that the ability that we have at the JAC to hold on to those A forms, right? That gives us the leverage and the incentive to be able to go back to the victims and the police officers and see if we can't get them to a civil citation, because we haven't filed it. So that is very critical for those of you that want to try to input something. And then the other thing was, you know, when you say that we have almost 95% compliance with juveniles being cited, that's what he just told you. That other 5 to 7%, you know, ranges from 90, 93, 95. Those are the kinds of cases we do. We're careful about them. Doesn't mean, you know, that they don't get diversion. It's just we got to pay a little more attention to them.
Sure.
Okay. So we are, Judge.
Mhm.
Ms. Randle and Todd, because in the chat, the chat is going crazy with questions.
Oh, it is?
But the biggest question or the biggest issue or the problem that I see is that every child is taken to your JAC, all right? Which means they get handcuffed and put in a police car and transported. There are studies that say putting handcuffs on a child, and came out of the University of South Florida, is like child abuse, and it creates a PTSD type situation. Is there a way, and since you say our state attorney is in the new and novel things, to make sure that that child does not wind up handcuffed and in the back of, even if they get the civil citation, the trauma has already been done. by arresting them. And even if you say, I didn't really arrest them, you put the handcuffs on them, you restrain their activities, that's tantamount to an arrest or equivalent thereof. And then you put them in the car and take them to jack so they can get a citation. Is there a way around that? Or, I mean, have you all tried a way around that to just have the citation issued right there where the child is? Call the parent, as the statute says, and how can we innovate? Because that does, even if they get off and they do the program, they've still been traumatized.
Todd, do you have the answer to that?
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. Not all, I don't know the exact percentage, but not all kids who are taken to the jack on civils are put in handcuffs. And I think the majority are not. Now, I could look into that number, but if an officer knows they're going to get civil, I don't believe they're not putting them in handcuffs, because these aren't even dangerous kids. Dangerous kids don't get civil. They're not even considered dangerous. Now, why the police officers like to take them to the jack is because it's more work for them if they don't. They've got to find out if the kid is eligible. They've got to do the paperwork on their own. And you can't always have a police officer do that. They're not always going to do that. So if they go to the jack, we know that the jack will make certain that they're eligible and encourage them to put them into civil citation if they're eligible. So I think if we were to say, okay, officers, just do it on your own and don't take him to the jack, I think our numbers would fall down. I don't think we would be, I think we would, we wouldn't be in the 90s, because we would depending on the officers to do. And believe me, sometimes an officer, they have a lot of paperwork to do. They might do this and they go, it's easier if I don't do the civil citation, whatever. I'm just going to do a notice to appear in court. Well, guess what? You do a notice to appear in court, there's no civil. You've bypassed the entire civil citation process by doing that. We don't want that to happen. And we know that our numbers are high because of the encouragement that the jack staff is doing when the police officers bring them in and they see they're eligible for civil, and the police officers is saying, well, not really. Oh, okay, not so fast. Your chief wants this. And then they always comply.
Yeah, and the other thing about that also is the jack will do most of the work. Contact the parents, do the background check. So a lot of that the police officers might otherwise do, the jack will do. One other thing I'm reminded of as I'm listening to all of you is one of the reasons the jack was such an important role, Ilona, what judge, was because I can't remember which department it was, but we wanted everyone counted, and it became a money issue. I know that sounds terrible to say, but it is. Funding issues, funding sources. So if they weren't arrested, they refused to count them. And of course, that meant less money for the community, for the juveniles, which was crazy. So we spent a long time trying to convince the state that would provide some of the funding that you have to count these children, whether they're arrested and go the DJJ track or whether they're arrested and go the civil citation track. So that you just might want to look at that. I don't know how that works in your community, but it was a hurdle we had to overcome.
Like now, when you say they go to jack and the A forms, they're A forms in Dade, they're probable cause affidavits in Broward.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I had to learn that. I had to learn the lingo. When you say that they're held off to the side, who holds those?
The jack does.
Okay.
The staff at the jack.
But what happens to the child while the probable cause affidavit or the A form is being held? Tell us that procedure. Walk us through.
Todd?
So what happens is we have the officer write up the arrest form. The reason being is that if the juvenile fails civil citation, it's very difficult for an officer to duplicate it 6 months later if the kid drops out. We tried it before and it doesn't work. So we have the officer just do the arrest form, and it's held in abeyance. And again, it goes into the Quest system. Again, there's no fingerprints that go into the juvenile justice information system at all. There's no booking photo that goes into the juvenile justice information system. They are taken and they're held in abeyance. Now, if the child bounces out, the arrest form is filed with the clerk's office and the prints do go into the system, and then it's a case that's processed like any other case. So, but it's just a great thing. It's just held in abeyance, and as soon as they successfully complete, then we've been told that we can destroy the arrest form in 6 months.
See, our Jack Center doesn't work that way. I think what initially we started to do is Jack had access to the civil citation data and whether a person was a child was going to be in there. So the officer or deputy would need only call our Jack and say, I have this child, give the information and say, yes, they qualify or no, they don't. And then the form would be completed and they would be released. However, that only works, and civil citation in Broward only works if the top of the agency says you're going to do this. And initially we started out, and one of my really good friends he's retired now, a homicide detective, and he was saying, oh, Marsha, nobody wants to arrest these kids. I'd be embarrassed to go into Sallyport with a little kid. Nobody wants to do that. That doesn't even really count as arrest. And he was put in charge of running the program for Fort Lauderdale. What he found was that was not true. So saying, please, officer, if you have an opportunity, it saves time, you can get back to work, please give these children a civil citation. That doesn't work. It was only those agencies that put in some sort of discipline and the chief or the sheriff said, we're all in, we're going to do this. That is only the time when we get the best results from our law enforcement agencies. So there's a different setup. It's just not being utilized. And so we would need the different agencies, and some of them, they are really hard. They want, until it comes to their kids, they really want to make sure that the kid gets arrested, period. So we're working on renewing those. We have a lot of different changes in chiefs. You have a new sheriff. So we're working to rebuild the program and let the direction come from the top down. And our sheriff is on now, but we've got to look at where these children are drilled down, which agency is refusing to give, and kind of go from there. But it has to be, for us, it has to be a top down, because our setup at Jack is not the same.
Madam President, let me ask you, do you have sort of a Broward Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs, something like that?
We do, and I've been, and other folk have been. And so you have these guys with the bravado and that sort of thing, and they'll give, I've seen them give, our top folk 5 minutes on their agenda, and they say, okay, thanks. And so that doesn't really work individually, because we do have relationships with the individual chiefs and sheriff and that sort of thing. That seems to work here. But you do have some small agencies who are insisting upon arresting, and particularly if we were going to speak truth to power in Broward County, Black and brown children. And where we don't find that to be the same when it comes, it depends on what zip code you're in. And so we want to make sure that all children are given an fair opportunity for a second chance. And that's kind of where we're working to rebuild and go on.
Are your police chiefs generally appointed by a manager or mayor, or
They're generally hired by the city manager.
Yeah, let me just chime in a little bit and kind of piggyback off some of the stuff that Marsha's talking about, okay? Because we do have a Broward County Chiefs of Police Association, and what's going on here is there is a frequency of changing of the guard from the sheriff's office to chiefs of police. There's a frequency of political expectations and what the demands are on law enforcement organizations. So a lot of our chiefs of police in this county are operating under the guidance and principles of what their city managers want and what their mayors want, versus saying, okay, I'm the chief of police and I have to do what makes sense for the entire community. That's the biggest challenge they have. Now I'm in a little different position. The people put me here. I have a lot of autonomy and a lot of authority to just say, hey, we're going to push, let's do different things. But when you're talking about and this is Catherine, I was going to bring this up to you. How did you all in Miami get this to be such a unified thing that every single police department is super engaged, because I highly doubt that the political climate is different, right? City managers want to maintain their jobs. Mayors want to, was there a standard MOU that you lock the organizations in regardless of who's the mayor or the city chief of police?
No, Sheriff, it's an excellent question. I was saying at the beginning of this that, you know, every community is different, and not even even in my area, I've got 34 police departments. We don't have a sheriff yet. That'll be coming in 2025. But and I don't, you know, it's not, we make it look easy, right? Because we're giving you charts now. But it wasn't, you have to, and we also have an excellent relationship with the Dade League of Cities. I swear them in. I go to the Dade Chiefs of Police. It's building those relationships and starting police chief by police chief. And you have to do it, at least this is what's my experience, and I'm not saying that this will work for you, but what worked for me was I was able to do it in one community. I'd go to the mayor, the manager, depending on what the structure is, right? And I'd say, look, this is what it's going to save you in time, response time. Your police officers can be, especially your smaller ones, they don't have a lot of people that they can send out to calls when they get a call out, right? And they don't want to be spending 3 to 4 hours down at the detention center processing a 17-year-old for possession of marijuana, I don't think anymore, right? Or whatever they're arresting them for. So I was able to convince them that A, they complete the program. This was an alternative. It would save them money. It would save, depending, I don't know who pays for your detention center, we pay for it locally. It's going to save money there. And they're going to successfully complete it, so you're not going to see them again. And this time to do depositions and go to court and all of that is all saved. So it's really police department by police department being able to do that. And eventually they could see the success of it and the wisdom. And then of course, the long term, right? You haven't, you know, they're not going to lose their financial aid. They will get into college if that's what they want. All those collateral consequences that come along with an arrest record. Help a lot too. So
yeah, and I think Kathy brings a great point, and that I think it goes to what happened when I took office. I think you were one of the first state attorneys I actually reached out to, and we talked about the civil citation program because I just saw how great the numbers were. And I think the difference here was we had a state attorney that never really reached out to the managers, the chiefs of police individually, right? That was never done. Those type of relationships, or at least those conversations, were never had. And I think that was something that you impressed upon me when we talked about it, and how I wanted to improve our numbers down here is, you know, Harold, reach out to those individual chiefs, those managers, the commission members, and build from there, and then make it more of a collaborative effort, but also talk their talk, right? Talk their speak with reference to budgets, with reference to efficiencies. And I think that's something that we're doing. That's something that we've started since January. We're working down that list, and it's going to take some time. But there's other things that I think that we can do, and certain things that we're trying to do. And as I brought up to you, Kathy, was with reference to the screening, the civil citation screening process. It's something that's really never really been done throughout the state. It's something that we're working with the clerk's office, and we're looking into, and actually we're trying to build a technology base to where we can get those, as it is in Miami-Dade A forms, but here the probable cause affidavits. And essentially we're telling the law enforcement agents, I mean, look, I've had the conversations with Sheriff Tony and other chiefs of police. I've been at the meetings where I said, hey, you need to issue civil citations. It's a must. We have to have this because it benefits our overall society, and it affects our children positively. But if you don't, we're going to create a screening process, and we're going to kick those over to a program. And so we're trying to come up with ways to say, hey, you need to do it. It's something that must be done, but I'm using my power and my discretion as a state attorney. Look, we make filing decisions, right? You can present something to us. We make the determination whether or not we're going to file it. And if you decide to not go with our policy directive of issuing civil citations, or the community directive because the community is asking for it, I'm not going to file them. we're going to send them to the civil citation program, and we're going to see those numbers go up. But yeah, no, I think those are all great points. And that's why I'm trying to emulate some of the things that you've done in Miami-Dade, because it's been successful.
I just want to add this one point. State Attorney Fernandez, Randle, I appreciate, all the work that you've done in Dade County. And more importantly, I appreciate you sharing that with us here in Broward County as well. Because, it reminds me that we've been doing civil citation here in Broward County for almost 10 years. And there is a sense of urgency in this community like no other. We had a civil citation program that had a level and a degree of success. It was producing good results at a high rate with a very low recidivism rate. We were doing it well, and that somehow fell apart. And I think it largely fell apart because of like what Sheriff Tony pointed out and what you pointed out, along with State Attorney Pryor, is that we've had a revolving door of leadership in our law enforcement. And you have that ability to present to officers a written directive from their chief of police as to where they stand. But we're having chief of police coming in and going, retiring, moving around, and the leadership doesn't recognize the level of urgency that this community is demanding to make sure we save our children. We want our children to have an opportunity to grow up without a record looming over their heads, so they can have an opportunity to prosper and move forward and not have to worry about, some minor misgiving that they had as a child. We've all been there. We've done it. We want to give them that opportunity to move forward and be productive. So I understand that there's a need to have some level of coalition building. But for how long do you try to do that coalition building? For how long do you try to bring people to the water and ask them to drink, and they don't drink? Because we've been doing this. Hollywood and Coral Springs have not issued civil citations in this community. I'm calling them out by name. They knew who they are.
Don't forget Coconut Creek.
They don't do it. They won't do it. We've asked them. We've begged them. We've cajoled them. We've tried to persuade them. We made all these reasoned arguments. We showed them the numbers from BSO. We showed them the numbers from Fort Lauderdale. We showed them the recidivism rate. We showed them everything. They won't do it. So at this point in time, we have to ask the community to help us to push forward the importance of this initiative. We have the will at the table. We have the will in the leadership, but we got rogue chiefs of police in communities that will not give our children a chance. And we can't have that where if you live in a certain neighborhood, you're going to get arrested and get a record, where if you live in another neighborhood, you get a civil citation. That's not fair. So my question is, how long?
No, I agree. And go.
Let me just say this. I did, when we decided that we were going to really make civil citation real in Broward, I did reach out to Mike Sass, and he did call the chiefs and the sheriffs into his office, and they had a talk. And there was some that told him, too, that that's not something they wanted to do. They said they'd never hire anyone to be a law enforcement officer who has a civil citation, which, he shared with them how stupid that was. But we went to individual entities, and we started with the two largest agencies. We started with BSO and Fort Lauderdale. And they work with us. They even put in a disciplinary piece into their SOPs to make sure that their deputies did, and they followed through. And I think what's happening now is the numbers are not there. And I think we have to get a commitment from the current chiefs. And I'd like to start with the largest agencies for sure, and ask the sheriff that I've seen BSO's numbers. They ain't great. But I need, what I'm going to ask, and I did speak to the colonel about this, is to look at those. And I think they said, most of them, if I'm not mistaken, Colonel, it said something about domestic violence. A part of that is, now, most of us have siblings. And what, I know in my house, we had some scraps there that maybe if the police had called, nobody was bleeding or anything, no weapons, but that's in my community, that's how we do things.
Ms. Randle had twins, so she can attest to that.
So,
Marsha, don't worry about it. The statute of limitation is up. You're good.
and so when you have, it could be two siblings who are just fighting, and sometimes, moms may call, but we haven't learned yet. When you call the police, you get the police. And so that's not what the end wanted to be. And I know that, and I believe, and Colonel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of your missed opportunities had to do with domestic violence. And I think some of the deputies in the year we looked at, which is 1920, said, okay, that's it. And so they went with the arrest route. So we have to find a way to deal with this within the different agencies. Otherwise, they will just use that loophole to make sure that our children don't get an opportunity. So we would need your commitment, Sheriff, to make sure that begins to happen within your agency.
Sure. And Marsha, let me just tap into something really quick, because I heard some ideas and conversations. You all been at this a long time. We've tried to go the route, whether it be myself, predecessors, Mike Satz, whomever that held these positions, and talked to the chiefs of police to get them on board to put out a mandate, right? A call for action. Hey, we need you to do this. Have we ever taken an approach or an angle to get some type of legitimate contractual mutual aid agreement amongst all the city managers? And here's why I cut the police out, right? Because the managers and your mayors are the ones that are really controlling much of these cities. I came out of Coral Springs. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're spot on. You ain't lying, all right? It's hook 'em, tag 'em, and bag 'em. It is what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But if you lock in cities to get them agree, whether it be a percentage, X amount of encounters, then you don't have to worry about who's your sheriff. Then you don't have to worry about who's the next chief of police, because you have some type of legitimate contractor agreement that says, we here in Coral Springs are going to implement the juvenile citation program at least 25% of the time out of our chances for arrest every year. I'm just trying to get creative. Have we tried that in Broward County?
We have gone to, the reason we got Miramar on deck is because we met with Wayne, and he took care of that. The reason that Lauderhill was on board is because we can count to 3 in Lauderhill as well. And so, yes, we have some of the agencies. However, you do have some cities, they're like Mayberry, they got 6 cops or whatever, but their city managers and their city commissioners share the officer's vision as to not issue civil citation, and particularly to Black and brown children. If you have a kid that goes to school, drives through Coconut Creek, and and the kid is Black or brown, if something happens, they're going straight to the jack. And what we also, when children were brought to the jack, there was an agreement in place, a partial agreement in place, where if the child had not been processed already and the jack staff determined that the child did qualify, there were a few departments that allowed the BSO to enter them into the civil citation program. Now, there were some cities that pushed back, but there were some others that were in agreement with that. And there was a memorandum of understanding between some of the law enforcement agencies and BSO. I'm told that that's no longer in place, or we need something to happen under your leadership in order to make that happen.
Okay.
We're starting all back over.
That's good.
I'm sorry, Ms. Randle wanted to interject something.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judge. I was just going to echo what the sheriff said in terms of, because I heard you, and there's a lot of turnover at the police chief's level. It's all very difficult, but they're making a commitment to their bosses. And that's why I was asking about what's your infrastructure, manager appointed, mayor appointed. And I assume you have a League of Cities as well. I am very active with my League of Cities.
Yeah.
So I think if you can chip away at that leadership, so that no matter whoever, no, I'm not the sheriff, but it's very important that you're there, Sheriff Tony, but whoever your police chief is, they're following the policies and the dictates of their bosses And what those bosses are responding to what the community needs.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is easy, okay? I told you, I cannot tell you, I'm in my conference room at the office, and I cannot tell you how many times I had the Chamber of Commerce of Miami Beach here upset with our position on all kinds of civil citation, possession of marijuana cases. I would actually have citizens say, we're gonna have the city put their own prosecutor. Sometimes you got to convince those city people. The Chamber of Commerce is if your chief of police doesn't want to do it, or your citizens advocacy group. If you can chip away at the people that your leadership is listening to, that can be very helpful. But I don't want to tell you it's easy either. But
it's not, and it's a great point. And you've always stressed that to me, that it's not easy. It's going to take some hard work, and it's going to take some dedication to it, right? And I think I'm going to applaud Sheriff Tony for that, because I think that was a great point, right? Me and him have had this discussion. We spoke to the chief of police, right? But I think it's a great point that if myself and Sheriff Tony, we commit here right now in this forum that we'll meet with the mayors, we'll meet with the city managers, we'll force the issue on this MOUs. I think this could be a first step. And to Mr. Weeks' point, because I understand the frustrations of Mr. Weeks and Madam President Ellison, you've been doing this for a while. You've been doing it for a long time, and now is the time. We can't wait anymore. Let's come up with the deadline. Let's talk about this. Let's say X amount of months or however long, and let's get these city managers and these mayors on board with the MOU regarding the civil citation. And there's no way around it for the police chiefs. And I think, and I'm dedicated to that. I'm making that pledge right now. If my brother Sheriff Tony is willing to do that here.
Oh, look, I'm in. The concept hit me when I'm hearing everybody talk about it. And another thing that we can do with that, and I'll talk to legal and see what they can come up from the MOU side is almost giving these cities an out. And what do I mean by that? They're not going to want to just lock in forever. Run it as a pilot program, right? The next 5 years, we're trying to analyze data to show the proof of concept. That'll get the buy-in, right? And then over that 5-year period, if everyone's committing 25% of whatever juvenile arrest will be civil citation versus whatever that number we come up with, then they get to see, okay, here's what we've done. It's successful in Coral Springs. It's successful in Coconut Creek. The world didn't fall apart. My house isn't getting broken. People aren't getting shot up, right? Crime is balanced out, and we're saving money because now we're not spending all this money to incarcerate, etc. I think that's I don't know if that's what y'all had before, Marsha, if it was that type of setup.
The problem with that, Sheriff, the 25%, the 25%.
Don't hold me to a number.
I was just saying, if you don't, I think you have to stick with every eligible child, because when you do that, you're giving them out. My child is never going to get the benefit of doubt. And the numbers bear that out. I'm just not, speculating. The numbers bear that out. And there was a statute change that Judge can talk about from 2019.
2019.
But when I looked through the SOPs, we received a copy of, we don't have yours, Sheriff. But when we look through the SOPs that we gained, a lot of those haven't been updated since 2014. So the departments are not operating according to statute, which is where we need Attorney Pryor to make sure that, that is happening. And so I think we were working with him to come up with an agreement out of his office so that he can share and make it, make it real. But many of the departments are not in compliance with the current statute.
No, look, I get it. Don't get fixed up on the numbers. I'm trying to figure out.
I was simply sharing that we should be pushing for every eligible child to be offered.
It is clearly evident with those SOPs. It's clearly evident, like many of them that weren't updated since 2014. And if you look, a lot of those jurisdictions, those are ones that weren't issuing civil citations. So it shows you how serious or how serious they actually took, more lack thereof, in issuing civil citations for juveniles.
Judge,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Judge. No, go ahead, Judge. And
what you got to look at now is that in 2019, the legislature amended Florida Statute 985.12. This is not discretionary, a pilot, let's do it. This is the law, okay? And so when we start filing 42 USC 1983 actions for these children getting arrested, when the statute says issue a citation, okay, so this is not pick and choose time now for the chiefs of police and the city managers. This is Florida statute. It's the law. Okay, they don't have to like the law, but the law says they have to follow the plan that was developed by the state attorney's office, in conjunction with the public defender and the clerk of court, or they come up with paragraph 5A, come up with their own plan, but don't have a plan and you don't follow it.
Mhm.
Okay, so back then in 2013, it was discretionary, you know, and the legislature really put some teeth into this, because I think one of our viewers was saying that, you know, a state senator says it wasn't working, and she's with the League of Women Voters, and I think it was Dewey that said it didn't work. And so that's why the statute in 2019, and here we are in 2021 talking about, you know, well, let's see what we can do and see if they'll sign on to it. They don't really have a choice now. They got to come up with a plan to issue these citations. And then they said the program is run by the state attorney's office. So you got to be a little forceful with them, saying, well, let's get a memorandum of understanding. No, my understanding is you follow the law. Okay, I'm sorry, Kathy, I haven't changed over the years. But
Now you have it. Hallelujah.
I read the statutes as they are.
That's the Philly girl.
And the statute says shall, okay? And so if you shall do it, there's no, you know, well, you know, the statute is poorly written because it didn't say the police had to do it. Well, if it says you shall have a plan, why would you have a plan and not follow the plan that you shall have a plan? So you got to broach it from that end. Just tell them, and Kathy's the chief law enforcement officer in her county. Mr. Pryor, you're the chief law enforcement officer in this county. You're going to have to get a little forceful. They don't have a choice in following the law. And it's going to look real embarrassing that we got to sue folks to follow the law.
Okay, so Your Honor, that was my next follow-up, right? So where's the teeth in it, right? Oftentimes we get legislation. Is there any teeth from a punitive side when it's not followed? You know, I haven't read over, so I don't know.
They didn't put a penalty in there for y'all, but the penalty is 42 USC 1983. Commit that to memory.
There's a penalty.
As a former federal prosecutor, commit that to memory.
There's a penalty. There's two penalties, actually. One, you don't want Judge Holmes to file a federal lawsuit against you. You don't want to plan to that, right? Two, me as the chief law enforcement officer, the one that makes these decisions as to filing, right? So any law enforcement officer, you could bring a case to me, right? I can make a decision. My office can make a decision. We're either gonna file it or we're not gonna file it, right? And so the penalty with that is you could keep banging your head against the wall. And I'm not talking about you, but the law enforcement agencies that aren't complying, you could continue to bang your head up against the wall and try to present these cases to us to file. We're not going to do it. We're not going to file it. And you're going to waste resources in trying to continuously present cases that we've already told you that we're not going to do. And we've already told you, you need to issue more civil citations. So then it gets to a point where I go to the public and we say to the public as a collective, hey, this law enforcement agency, they're inadequately using your resources, right? They're banging their head up against the wall, continuously going after these low-level offenses that the prosecutor said they're not going to bring forward. And so they could be focused on more serious crimes or serious natured offenses, but you still bang your head against the wall. That's the problem. That's the teeth in it. That's where our power comes in this.
But the community wants to know, there's a question in the chat. Can we give you all a deadline for getting this done? And I'm going to tell you what the Supreme Court said in the case of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, with all deliberate speed.
And you, I'm afraid of that.
Listen, on that, it's coming up to 8, and I think you're all amazing. I really congratulate you for your tenacity and not giving up. Madam President Ellison, I can just see you've been doing this a long time. And I just have a lot of confidence in your new state attorney and your new sheriff.
Thank you.
And if you got Ilona Holmes there threatening lawsuits, let me tell you, I'm so glad she's in
Oh, it's not a
Broward.
threat. It's not a threat, Kathy. It's not a threat.
But
Remember,
no, I
The
know.
NAACP
but-
is ready. I can assure you.
But I want you to know also, if there's anything I can do, picking up the phone, talking, making a presentation. Harold, I've already told you, if you want me to go hand in hand with you to go make presentations, talk to these chiefs, call up their bosses, get my League of City guys to talk to your League of City guys. If there's anything like that that you think I can do, and I don't want to elbow my way in or anything like that. I'm your neighbor and I want to be neighborly and helpful. And I believe,
I'm there every other week, so it's going to happen.
I know, I know it's gonna happen. I look at all you wonderful faces and, you got Gordon Weeks there and you got Sheriff Tony and you got Ilona Holmes. You guys are there. So just call me if you need me anytime, all right? Thank you for including me. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Colonel Holmes, you have been trying to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to add, thanks, Madam President. I just wanted to add that it appears, here in Broward County, a lot of the police chiefs, I've spoke to the Broward County Chiefs of Police Association and tried to get buy-in from them. I know the sheriff is representing the county and we're trying to improve the numbers here and change our protocol. And we've done that here, but without everyone collectively and these other chiefs of police throughout the county, it's an uphill battle. And what I see is that a lot of these officers out here are following the mindset of these police chiefs. And we really, really have to change that because I really think a lot of these officers are given discretion and they're abusing that discretion that they have. And here at the sheriff's office, we are changing our protocol so that discretion can't be abused. We have our protocols, it's set in place. And I see how they're doing it down in Dade County. Those officers are taking these juveniles down to Jack, and Jack is doing a lot of the paperwork for them. And for these guys, they say, oh, the work is done. They clear their hands of it. Well, our officers here in Broward County, they have to understand that we don't have the same system here. However, abusing that discretion and taking away the freedoms and liberties of these kids for these minor offenses, like you said, Madam President, we have to break that pipeline from schools from schoolhouse to jailhouse, and it's important that we change the mindset, and it starts at the top. Whether these chiefs of police are following behind these city officials or they're doing it on their own, we have to change the mindsets of these officers. And we're starting here with our deputies, that we're educating them, we're changing our protocol, and hopefully you'll see better numbers. And we're starting to see that already.
May I just say one more thing? I mean, and this really dovetails on what Colonel Holmes just said. I mean, when I hear these conversations, how people aren't, the police aren't cooperating with civil, it's sort of laughable because, again, I deal with some of the most dangerous cases that come into Miami-Dade, attempted murders, armed carjackings, armed robbery. I mean, just terrible stuff. We're talking about the least serious crimes. They're all misdemeanors, but so what are we talking about? Trespass, petty thefts. I mean, where they might have stolen $20 of something. We used to have a lot of possession of cannabis. We can't even prosecute those anymore because hemp has been legalized. Resisting without violence, minor criminal mischief cases. They're such minor cases, it's laughable. These and kids we know make mistakes. They should have the opportunity. When we do it, now again, let's say you wanted to start out slowly and the police were like, well, we don't want to do it like in Miami-Dade, they do 3 of them. Start out with 1. Just start with 1, and then, maybe you could progress to 2. We do up to 3 because we find that, listen, if a kid, is shoplifting and they do it one other time, okay, you know what, put them back into civil. You know what, and typically they won't do it again. This is what we're finding, but it's just ridiculous to think that the least serious crimes, we're not allowing the kids to have an opportunity to not have it on their record. And that's just that, and that's what you've got to get to. And there's got to be pressure on the police agencies for as many people as possible, and because from grassroots saying that and expose them for not being involved. It goes up to the chief, but and this is what, again, it doesn't happen, but it's got to happen. And what we're doing is right. And like the state attorney said, nothing is falling apart, and we're doing and crime is going down by doing it.
Thank you. And just what does the statute say about the number of chances?
3. But some officers think that if they load up the A form or probable cause affidavit, say for instance, petty theft, trespass, and resisting without violence, then they think that that's the 3.
Mhm.
But I think the statute, if you read it reasonably and the way it's written, it's each occurrence, event. So that means they could get possibly 3 civil citations.
That's right. I mean, right. If there's
You agree?
three charges in one incident, like that's what that counts as one. That is one.
Thank you.
Right. If you have another incident on on a completely different time, that would be the second one. So and listen, and what we do as well, because we have a policy where let's say, well, 12 and under, they're supposed to call us before they make any arrests, and so we decide. But a lot of times we'll tell the police officer, like, let's say if it's a grand theft or a criminal mischief felony, we'll say, listen, will you be okay with charging this as a misdemeanor to allow the juvenile to have civil citation? You know what? Make it a criminal mischief under. Make it a petty theft, as opposed to grand theft over $750. And you know what? They're going to get the restitution, even if it's a felony amount. But they could do civil. So we're always, the JAC does that. We're always encouraging officers, charge felonies where applicable as misdemeanors, so they can go into civil.
But Todd, you just said something.
You started out by saying what? Now repeat that part.
What's the age
limit?
Wait, say again, what now?
You said that if a police officer arrests somebody 12 or under.
Okay, right. Okay, we have a policy in Miami-Dade County, 12 and under, they need to call me to authorize the arrest, because I don't believe that 12 and under. Now, I'm not saying never. I've never arrested a 10-year-old. I can tell you that, and I've been in office for 7 years. 11 and 12 sometimes, but discuss it with us, and we'll advise you whether we're willing to prosecute. Because again, I saw someone mention in the chat, we have what we call prevention services. Prevention services will assess the child. It's the JAC. It's the same Juvenile Services Department. They'll assess the child, and they'll give the child the same services that they would have gotten had they gone before the judge. Because you arrest an 11-year-old, they're going to be incompetent to proceed. It might take them 2 years to gain competency. And what are you going to, 2 years later, you're going to give a kid services for what they did 2 years ago? It makes no sense. If it's not fast justice for juveniles, they're not the same people, a year later. So we believe in prevention services, that you don't bring kids into the system, and we'll encourage victims to go along with this and say, listen, if you arrest this person, nothing's going to happen in the juvenile justice system. Believe me. Let's try prevention services, and you're giving them something. You're telling them they're going to get the same counseling, whatever, and hopefully that will appease the victim. You got to give them something, like the state attorney said.
Madam President, if I may.
Hang on one second, a sheriff, and then Mr. Weeks.
Yeah, I'll be quick, Gordon. Just from a historical perspective for me, right? Educate me up. How is it that these two systems through DJJ are so drastically different that this could be allowable in Miami, and to the likes of Marsha, Gordon, they've been working on this issue for a decade in Broward County, and we haven't leaped to that system? What am I missing?
Well, first of all, the Department of Juvenile Justice does not have any involvement with civil citation at all, because it's pre-arrest. They do not get involved with pre-arrest cases. Zero involvement.
No, that I understand. But the fundamental difference here is what's going on at JAC, right? in that they have taken on the responsibility to do that vetting process, to cut down the timeline so that men and women in uniform can say, hey, I'm going to take them down to Jack. I'm good to go. There's nothing more for me to do. There's an evaluation process. We're not putting this young person into the system. How is that so different here than in Miami?
Well, naturally, Sheriff, in Broward, all you've got to do is call DJJ, see if the kid qualifies, write a one-page check box, not even one page, you check a couple boxes, you issue, give them kid to the parents, they're done. And they don't have to take them to the JAC. If somebody takes them to the JAC when the BSO was in charge of the JAC, you then in many cases could then determine, hey, this kid is qualified, and then you could essentially, unarrest. I know y'all don't like lawyers don't like to say that word, but essentially just say, I'm going to put this kid in here. And if the officer has something to say about it, you can say, boom, here's the MOU that I have with your chief. We'll take it from here. Well, you're no longer in charge of the JAC.
There it is. That's the answer I was looking for.
And so you have chiefs that are switching out. I just saw Dexter is gone down in Miramar, so we're gonna have some problems there. We've got to get with Dwayne very quickly. I heard that Paul over at Wilton Manors over in Mayberry is going to retire as well, so we've got to chat with him. I heard that Constance over in Ilona Hill is getting ready in the drop, and she's getting ready to roll out as well. And Frank is gone, so we've got to start do a lot of work. But in the meantime, while we're working, we've got to start making sure that the most agencies, the agencies who have the largest amount of officers are on board as we continue to work. But you all are no longer in charge of the JAC. And so it's a whole new ball game, and nobody's telling their officers and deputies to call the JAC, because there is someone there that could tell a law enforcement officer, yes, his kid qualifies, or no, he does not qualify. And that could be, you wouldn't even have to drive to the JAC, but it has to be implementation, and it's not in utilization, and the checks and balances are not happening within the law enforcement agencies themselves.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I could have a moment, I am so honored to be on this panel that you're hosting along with Judge Holmes, but more importantly, so early on in this new administration of all these constitutional stakeholders, it's good to take a look at what's going on with our sister county to the south.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at a county that is larger than ours,
Mhm.
that has, similar type of issues that we have when it comes to law enforcement, and to see that they're able to address these issues, to have policies in place about, reaching out to the state attorney before you take a child into custody that's under the age of 12. We had a child in Broward County a few years back that was 8 years old, arrested, put in handcuffs, took down for the ride. It happens, and we have to, now that we are moving into a new era, and we're leaving the draconian way of doing business in the past, that we look around the state of Florida, look to our sister counties, to our north and to our south, see what they're doing, and try to not only take some of that stuff and incorporate it, but improve upon what they're doing, improve upon it, so we can become the better, best approach for the state of Florida. We just can't keep doing business the same way we've been doing it for all along. We have to start getting some of these things in written policy. We have to start putting out policies on minimum age of arrest. We have to start putting out policy on how and when a department is going to issue a civil citation. We have to start making sure that all of the other agencies who are not the sheriff, who are not Fort Lauderdale, I can't even say Fort Lauderdale because we don't know where they stand anymore. We knew they were one of the leading agencies in Broward County with civil citation. They're one of the first on board back in the day. We don't know where they stand today.
The first, yes.
So we have to make sure we get some real commitments. And I appreciate you for having these public dialogues, because you can say a lot of things when you are in a closed meeting and no one's there to watch you. But when you say it in public, I want the public to hear it loud so they can hold you accountable. You didn't get these things done. We got to have civil citation, period, point blank. We got to have some minimum age for when an officer is going to take a child, an 8-year-old child, for a ride down to the station. We got to use better common sense. And even when you look to the South, they've been doing it for years. They've recognized the wisdom and a better approach. What are we doing? Are we walking around with blinders on and not want to do what's right? We got to do better.
Let me ask you, Todd, is your policy regarding arresting 12 and under, is that a written policy or is that just a practice? And how do law enforcement officers know that this is your policy?
Right. So it's a policy that we've had in practice for years. What we do is, and I remember a little as 2 years ago, I went to the Dade Chiefs meeting, and I just told them that all the chiefs are there for lunch, and I discussed it with them. So we publicize it to them. There are some agencies that absolutely will not make arrests, and they adhere to the 12 and under. And then there's nothing that we can do. I mean, like let's say, God forbid, an 8-year-old got arrested, that's not going to be through me. It's just someone that did not call me. And obviously not every police agency is calling me for 12 and under. A lot of them are. And we encourage everyone to do that because we give them alternatives that they're just not aware of. And there's always alternatives for a 10-year-old, because again, the biggest, and we're not talking about the most serious crimes. God forbid I have a 10-year-old that commits murder. I mean, okay, no one knows how to handle that. I mean, I've never had to deal with that, and I don't ever want to. But, when we're talking, I mean, like for instance, on the cruise ships that leave from Miami, we have jurisdiction because that's how it is. I had a 10-year-old that was playing putt-putt golf, and he knocked a kid over the head with a golf club. And so I had the victims were from South America. The little kid was from another part of the United States, or everyone's from everywhere. I encouraged them. I literally worked out with the victims to allow the kid to go into a counseling program wherever he lives. I mean, you can do stuff like that. I didn't want to authorize a 10-year-old to be arrested that lives in Texas, where the victims live in South America. I mean, it's just so crazy. But you can think outside the box with this, and the police agencies were okay. We'll try it, and that's what we do. So, because what are you going to do? Arrest a 10-year-old that's not competent to proceed for years? Nothing
In
gets done.
Broward, they may. Yes.
Well,
We
it makes no,
understand,
it just
Attorney
makes no
Pryor.
sense.
We
It makes no
understand. It's
sense.
okay. We understand. That's what we try to say. We understand.
Yeah, I'm on daddy duty right now, so I'm so
We
sorry.
get
It's fine. It's fine. Sheriff?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Sheriff.
So this is more just a question for Harold. Todd's sitting here giving out the playbook for Miami, things that they're doing. I can't wait on every chief of police to do what they need to do. I'm here now, right? So what does that sound like? That communication between BSO and, I mean, we're gonna have to work this out, but I'm willing to move forward with that.
Yeah.
We're having some type of communication, 12 or under.
So
building out some type of structure behind that.
So your agency actually is pretty good with following through with our duty prosecutor list, right? It's just the other agencies that don't, right? And so that's what we're working on now. We're actually taking it a step further. We're trying to actually have a written policy. I have a proposed written policy that we're actually going to issue out that I want to send to the chiefs of police next week. Actually a written policy rather than just a gentleman's agreement where, hey, if you ever have a situation where you're dealing with a child, 10 years or younger, we need to have a written policy. So that's what we're working on now. But I will say the difference between Broward and Miami-Dade, it's 10 years or younger. I just found this is why these forums are great. Miami-Dade is 12 years old and younger. And I believe Judge Holmes a couple days ago made the recommendation of 12 years and younger. So that's something we're gonna have to look at in my draft, and maybe that's something we present. But yeah, that is the goal. The goal is to submit an actual written policy on that, so you all have that directive, because it's always been word of mouth, right? My prosecutors say, hey, if you ever come into a circumstance, you're dealing with someone 10 years or younger, give us a call before you make the arrest or you take them to jack. My goal is to actually have that written as a written policy where it's standing and all the chiefs see that.
Well, look, here it is, right? Let's get that language outlined. I'll be your first administration to sign. All right, let's get it clear, because what's going to happen is no one likes to be first. Nobody does like to take the risk. Nobody wants to be first. So communicate with me, whoever on your side is drafting it, working with Terrence, my GC over here. I'll be your first. All right. There's been enough talk for the last decade. And to Gordon's point, we should be embarrassed. Our next door neighbor, and I'm competitive, been kicking our butt in this area. All right. So I'll be your first. That's my commitment today. All right. So let me know how things are going, get the legal terminology, whatever policy structures in there. And if there's some modifications or something we need to do to make it work, we'll do it at BSO.
Mr. Bass, can I ask you a question? You said that they call you before the arrest is made of a 12-year-old or younger. Are you the sole person they call, or can you have duty? I think it's better to have one person, and if they're on vacation, have a designated.
Listen, I'm the chief of the juvenile division, so I make all the important decisions in Miami-Dade County. I don't like to delegate important things because I don't want someone to get it wrong. Like, for instance, I make all the direct file decisions. Why? Because I've been doing it so long. My goal is not to direct file any kids. I understand some are going to be direct file because of the dangerous nature. We only had 36 kids out of the thousands of kids that got arrested, got direct filed last calendar year. 36 is the lowest number in recorded history in Miami-Dade County. So this year will probably even be lower than that. But again, I'm not working with numbers, I'm working with cases, individual cases. But our goal is to keep cases in juvenile if we can. But again, so I like to be involved. If I'm ever not there, I do have a deputy chief that, that I would have to delegate to, I try and be around for everything.
Yeah, and in Broward, it is the chief of our juvenile unit is the point of contact on that. So it's always the juvenile chief.
But without a written policy, that means nothing. We had, if you recall, I'm not sure if you were on yet, at our circuit advisory board, I asked the colonel, are you aware, who was brand new, relatively new to the position, and also the then acting assistant chief of Fort Lauderdale, of the policy of before you're arresting these babies, to call the state attorney's office. And those are the two leading agencies, and they had never seen your policy or the state attorney's office policy because there wasn't one. And so of course he shared that, okay, I'll get right on and find out. But what was happening all the other time? And so, unless it's in writing, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
I agree. Todd, is there a written policy in Miami-Dade?
There's a policy that we've written up, and we disseminate to the police. That's it. I mean, and it just describes the 12 and under. But again, there are agencies that are very, very good with it, and then some agencies that are not so good. And that's how it used to be with civil. But I can't get everyone to sign on to 12 and under. And it's more difficult. Police want to do their own thing. They and typically they don't we typically don't tell the police whether they have probable cause or not. But again, if we're dealing with a young child, I won't tell them whether they have probable cause. I'll tell them that if you arrest the child, we probably will not be able to prosecute because they're so young and they're going to be incompetent to proceed. That's the main issue that I'm talking about. And you tell the victims that, well, you're going to be waiting for 2 to 3 years for anything to happen. And there's no services that will be provided to the juvenile while they're awaiting trial. So what's the use of bringing them in the system? As opposed to, I could put them in prevention services and give them the same services that they would get from the courts immediately, free of charge by the Juvenile Services Department. It's a win-win.
Someone asked what preventive services is. In Broward, there are at least 8 civil citation programs that offer a variety of preventive services. I believe For example, BSO has a fire starter program. They have another juvenile criminal community justice program that they do other things. There are other, the Urban League has a program. There are some mental health programs. It all depends on what the needs are of the child, and oftentimes the family, because they will refer the family to resources, because oftentimes these children are they have disabilities, and many times we don't make a provision for that in too many cases. Kids got stuff, and I may be the only one on here that did not have perfect children, but there are some other folk out here that don't have, and so sometimes the family just needs to deal with whatever. We found children who were in civil citation who were suicidal upon the initial assessment because they had lost a parent or something along those lines. And because we took the time to assess what was going on, you can't arrest your way out of this. If you could, then we wouldn't need all these law enforcement agencies. If you just arrest away the problem, that's not work. So it's time to do something different. And, I'm looking at our constitutional officers. We are known, and some folk not happy, but we are known as Wakanda County around here. So we all said that we wanted to make sure that there was some criminal justice reform. And so I understand, what's the count, 94 days this time?
Yes, they have been in office. All of they're in the same row on my screen, the state attorney, the public defender, and the sheriff. January 5th to today is 94 days.
Okay, and so we waiting. And
How
we're talking
long?
about, but not long now. What's the, when judge is saying, I said that was not a threat. We're looking to move here. I've already gotten permission from our national office and our general counsel, because we have got to save our children. I want to do just a couple of minute wrap up for each one of you, please, as we begin to close. We'll start out with the brother who's on daddy duty tonight, Harold Pryor.
Yes, no, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. The NAACP serves an important function, not only Broward County, but throughout the country. I was an NAACP member when I was 13 years old in the small town of Dade City, Florida. And to me, it's full circle to come back here, to be a constitutional officer, to work with the NAACP and the members, and to really protect our children and come up with innovative ways of doing it. This was a great forum because it exposed us to ideas. It allowed us to take some ideas. It's expanded certain things, and now we're able to take things from this actual meeting and then implement them on our end. We have to get our numbers up. It's just unacceptable for Miami-Dade, and I'm competitive. I played ball. I played college ball. I don't like to lose at anything. And to see Miami-Dade down there, they have like a 92% rate, somewhere high, right? In the 90s. I don't know the exact number, in the 90s in issuing civil citations. And for us to only be at 48%, for us to be the bluest county in the state, it's unacceptable. And so I'm gonna do everything in my power to do that. That's why I am working with Sheriff Tony and even Mr. Weeks in actually speaking to these law enforcement agencies to have them issue more civil citations for our juveniles. But if they don't, I'm going to use my power and my discretion as the state attorney to ensure that they actually do it, because it's the right thing to do. So I want to thank you all for having me. I have a son who is past his bedtime, and
Mr. Pryor, let me say this to you publicly. I am going to hold you responsible. Now, you have said a lot of good things, and that sounds real good, but it's time now to move from just words to actions. So I'm looking for that policy, those policies, the one certainly on civil citation that is within statute. And I'm waiting for, which I hope to be similar to Miami-Dade, or identical to Miami-Dade for the 12 and under. The gift of gab, you got that. We just need to see the gift of action. So we are looking for that expeditiously. Like right now, 92 days.
94 days. 94 days.
94 days. Okay.
Well, I submitted a draft and now I see that there's another edit that I need to make. So I'm gonna make that edit. I'm gonna get that over to the sheriff so the sheriff can look at it, and he's gonna be the first agency. And I think
okay, now you are the sheriff is different. I'm talking to the state attorney.
Well,
I'm asking you what your policy gonna be. The sheriff gonna do what he's gonna do. I'm saying what you gonna do as
Well,
far as that policy.
I'm
We
working
don't
on
need to, we don't need the sheriff to say grace over it at this point. That's coming out of your office. I need you to step up. You say you got 208 lawyers. Have all of them go on to get to work on those policies so we can go on and save these children.
I agree
State
with you,
attorney.
100%, and
Yeah.
we're on it.
Otherwise, we could have voted for your opponent. I'm just saying. We need you to follow through and help us save these children.
Exactly, and that's why I'm here. That's why I put my hat in the ring, to do the right thing. And if I don't do the right thing, you all know what you can do. You can vote me out.
Yeah, but we got 3.5 years for that. We need you to do something now so we don't have to worry about it. We need you to follow through.
I don't mind being held accountable at all. So,
okay, so then I'll be looking for your draft tomorrow.
All right, you'll get it. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, but you'll get it.
That's not funny, but that's not good. Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Sheriff Tony. Can you get?
Sorry, guys. Hey, look, thanks again for inviting me on. You know, I kind of jumped during the kind of late end of it and got the invite and heads up from Gordon and Marsha about how important this was going to be in the conversation. Not to just have my executive director, Colonel Holmes, is outstanding. He does what he does, but the people put me here. They need to hear from me. Y'all were right. And it was informative. I heard a lot of things that brought new concerns to me about what we can do and what other our sister counties doing. So we'll get some stuff done. I already made one commitment there, but I don't think that's the end of it, right? More of these conversations need to happen. I'm somewhat disappointed to see such a drastic difference only a few miles away from us, and to hear so many people have committed all this time for decades. So absolutely, I'll be the first. And for anybody who has paid attention for me in the last 2 years, I'm not afraid of a challenge. And I've broken a lot of barriers here, taking risks, but doing the things that were right. And that's why the people said we're going to give him another 4 years to see what else he can do. And I'm not complacent. So I mean this, Marsha, thanks, right, for giving me that sidebar call and say, hey, this one you got to be on. This can't be a representative. And I heard it. So as Harold move forward, we'll move forward. That's one element there. You had another ask of us in terms of looking at some of our policies and what we can put in place to kind of introduce this mandate, which is already a statutory, obligation. That's an easy request. That's something that we can get rocking and rolling on. It ain't going to take months and weeks to figure out, right? I don't have 200 plus lawyers, but I got a good 16 or so in here. So I'll be back on the next important one that we're talking about with end products in the hand, right? Not promises, but here's what we've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'll certainly be in touch. I appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Weeks.
Madam President, Judge Holmes, my colleagues, as a lifetime member of the NAACP, I know the commitment. I understand the struggle. And you know that I will be there with you every step of the way to help put, pencil to pen if that needs to help find some language that is clean and clear for everyone to understand. I am here to help try to give some history as to what we've been through to get here. The struggles that we had in the beginning and the successes that we've had and how we lost ground and what's causing us to lose ground. I am here to help in any way I can with a bit of persuasion. Sometimes, you use a little bit of honey, but sometimes you also have to use the hammer and also put pressure to folks to get things done. Whatever it takes, I am here. I am committed. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to see this through all the way to the end. And we're going to make sure, and I think it's important that we start with civil citation, because the reality is that civil citation is the most minor offenses, the most minor opportunities to give children an opportunity to prosper. So what we can do here, we can build on, and we can build to create other opportunities, not only for our children, but for our adults and everyone else in this system, our mentally ill, folks that are suffering with substance abuse. We have to figure out how to make this reform happen. Each and every one of us that are on this panel ran on a platform of reform. And we made a commitment to this community that we would help shape that criminal justice reform for Broward County. And there is a great sense of urgency for that to come to fruition. We don't know what that reform is going to look like, but it starts here today with some commitments of timetables, some commitments of effort, some commitments of goodwill that we're going to expend on our children. And from there, we will grow to the other areas of reform. So, Madam President, as always, thank you for continuing to bring truth to power. Thank you for always continuing to bring a spotlight in the shadows where people don't want to see. I thank you for bringing it into the public so we can make these statements publicly and not hide away from them later. So folks can know our commitment to this community and then judge us by our actions. Thank you for this opportunity.
And let me have our, so we can unmute, Colonel Holmes is our constant partner in our Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. He comes and we are just not nice to him, and he was new, but we're very passionate about our children, and we require, number one, in order to be on our board, you have to be in senior leadership. You have to be the person who's going to make decisions. If you got to go back and, I don't need officer friendly, deputy friendly, because if he got to ask the sergeant, the captain, the major, that's not helpful to me. I need somebody that has who has the authority to make a decision, and we welcome him in our usual way, even though it didn't sound nice. Everybody gets baptized in the same water, Colonel, and there will be a time when we are going to need the sheriff there as well. And Sheriff, you'll see that statutorily, certainly you are allowed to, and all of you are allowed to send a designee. And I asked personally, Mr. Weeks and Mr. Pryor, to not send a designee. This was so important dealing with our children, to ask them to designate those 2 hours a month to working with us in a collaborative, so that we can save our children. But I want to give Colonel an opportunity to speak. And I want to thank you for standing in. I know it ain't easy, but when it comes to children, we're very passionate about it. Go ahead, Colonel.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this town hall meeting. I tell you, I learned a lot from what's going on down in Dade County, and hopefully we can learn from them and raise our level. It's very, very important. I think, in our profession we have all types of people, but, wearing this badge means a lot to society. And I think it's important for us to make sure we have the right people behind the badge, doing the right thing and thinking the right way. And earlier I talked about mindset. We are obligated to save lives, not to destroy lives. And behind this badge and gun, we have a lot of power and discretion, and we can't abuse it at all. And I tell you, I love working with kids. I'm a former coach, and I'm trying very hard. And under the leadership of Sheriff Tony, who's a great leader himself, we're trying very hard to change the mindset of our troops. We're changing our protocols, we're changing our policy, and making sure that they understand that the youth are our future, and we can't destroy lives by taking someone to jail for something frivolous. Mr. Bass stated, these kids, a lot of them have issues. You don't know if a kid steals a cupcake from the store because he's hungry and he's homeless. You don't know that. But it's important for our law enforcement officers to step back, look at the big picture of things, because no one's perfect. And a lot of these officers have problems themselves growing up. And a lot of them forget that. And that's something that we try to bring to the forefront and educate our troops within the Broward Sheriff's Office. And I'm proud to say that Sheriff Tony has stepped up, and he makes sure that we are responsible, held accountable for our actions, and we are held accountable to making sure that our troops step up to the plate each and every day. But it's a pleasure being part of the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. I look forward to it every month. I learn a lot from everyone, and I thank you all for giving me this opportunity. and we are not going to stop. I'm a competitor. I'm a former football player. I don't stop. Judge Holmes is from the Northeast. Sheriff Tony's from the Northeast, Philadelphia area. We don't stop. We don't stop. And we're going to continue. And you have my word on that, Madam President.
Thank
Thanks.
you, sir. And Todd, we want to thank you for coming on and sharing with us. And I want you to have an opportunity to say something as well to us.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, my life is all about what we can do for the kids, and so it goes without that if me personally, office can do anything to help you, do not hesitate to call, because we've probably been there, done that. And you know, and I want to encourage you, because I remember how it was years and years ago. Now, and again, it doesn't happen overnight, but it absolutely does happen. And I can see that through all the excitement that you have, and I can sense it. This is going to happen. We will see Broward numbers changing rapidly. And that will be exciting, because again, even though they're not my kids, they're kids, and they should have the same opportunities that our kids are having. And I look forward to watching this this transformation.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting us. And please contact me anytime. And I absolutely will get in my calls.
Okay. And finally, my judge, my general counsel, Judge Ilona Holmes.
You know what, people keep saying, well, why is she referring to you as judge? I'm gonna always have that judge title until I go over to federal court. And I'm hoping I don't have to do that. I really don't like to make idle threats, but it's the law. You all, charged with upholding the law. Mr. Pryor, you're the chiefest law enforcement officer in Broward County. Okay, Sheriff Tony, you have jurisdiction throughout this county, countywide. Okay, you don't have to ask anybody, can I come in your backyard? You have countywide jurisdiction. But if you take the lead and show the others and talk to the others, then I'm sure that they will follow suit. I can't thank Kathy Fernandez Randle enough for coming. I kind of got her on short notice to be here, and she never tells me no. So I thank her profusely. Mr. Bass, I thank you. And as I told you in the chat, I'm going to be calling you from time to time, because I'm just here to suggest to law enforcement, to the state attorney's office, and even to the public defender's office, what we need to be doing for our children. Our children, we keep saying that they're our future, but we need to start treating them that way. Okay. And look who was marching during a pandemic when things were not going right. It was the children. During the civil rights movement, it was the children. SNCC, they were sitting at the counters getting beat and getting harassed. So we got to save these children, and we can't just verbalize it. Everybody runs on that. I noticed, I was listening to campaign speeches all last year, and they talked about the children. And they have bills on the floor. They can't even seem to agree on the minimum age to arrest a child. Okay, but we can do that here. We don't have to wait for the legislature to tell us we don't put 12-year-olds in handcuffs and take them to jail unless somebody, a legal mind, somebody with a law degree or in charge of a program or juvenile is present or says, do it. We hate that you do it. And to hear Mr. Bass say that he will do anything to make sure that those children get in the civil citation program. So Mr. Bass, I don't know if your background is law enforcement, but
No.
you can talk those police officers out of it. So you just have to be a good negotiator. But Sheriff Tony, if you take the lead, the others will follow. Mr. Pryor, if you take the lead, the others will follow. Mr. Weeks, just keep fighting. Okay, and Madam President, thank you for letting me do some work for the NAACP. It's my honor and privilege to assist you in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, everyone. Judge, I hope you don't have to dust off those law books. They ain't too dusty. You ain't been gone that long. But one thing that we do not do is make threats. If we talk about litigation, then we're very serious. I was sharing that we were talking about litigation regarding these voter suppression laws. We say that because we're serious, and we say that because we say let's save the children. It's not a slogan. It is real for us, and we're going to do everything and anything we have to make sure that it happens. I like everybody on here very much, but we're going to do what we have to do to save these children. You know, we don't have any other choice. And so I thank you all for joining. I thank you for your time. I thank you all for being just. Okay, I thank you all for attending. I thank you all for participating. I thank you all for being just a phone call or a text away as we continue on this. But I share with you the same thing I said to our state attorney. We are looking for change, not now, but right now, because it's been long enough. And a lot of these, and it's not, I don't think it's that complicated. Writing a memo saying, let's not put these babies, these kids, and, you know, bring them through the day. I don't know that this, you know, I said to the judge, I haven't been into the law school, but I've been by it, and I know some people who went in. So I know we can do some things if we just act like we care about the children, not just talk about it, but let's be about it as we go forward. So we thank you for everyone for participating, and I will be in touch with each one of you. Colonel, I will see you on soon at our DJJ board meeting, and we have our usual questions. And so you'll know what we're gonna ask. If I think anything else, I'll let you know, I'll send you a text. But thank you all and have a good evening. I appreciate you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a good one.